Hello, hello. We are back again for another Other Ink Thursday, and I have Tony Dougherty of the Dukes of Highland, which is a organization here in the Louisville area that's putting on like mega games, and I'm not exactly sure what that is, but we're going to find out. Hello, Tony. Welcome to my show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
This is one of those interviews where you reached out to me and you're like, "Hey, let me talk about my thing." So,
Hmm.
we're going to talk about it. Um, so but first, a question that I've been asking people this year is, I, I'm sure you're a gamer. You're not going to be organizing these events if you don't call yourself a gamer, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm curious about like how that identity with like a thing which is ultimately like a product that is bought and sold. Like, I mean, the difference between like children playing with a ball and a stick versus like, no, I bought this box that contained these bits and this is a game, as opposed
Hmm.
to I made up a game with my friends on the sidewalk, you know.
Yeah,
Like that's still a game, but the idea of like when does a game become like a thing that you engage with as a distinct unit?
yeah.
What's your earliest memory of that game, well, of a game in that sense?
Um, I mean, I've been, in quotes, gaming for as long as I can remember. I remember like my first video game system was a Spectrum, is it a Sinclair Spectrum? I'm from
All
England
right.
originally, of course, and so I had the little tape deck on the side and had to wait 20 minutes for my video games to load. But that was what we did back in the 80s. But then from like a board game perspective, like I remember playing Hero Quest. I
Mm,
didn't realize what a gem I had at the time, and I convinced all my friends to play. And yeah, I did all the sort of board gaming spectrum when I was a kid. Stepped away from that, I suppose, in teens and 20s, and we did LAN parties and a lot of video gaming. And then it wasn't till I became an adult that, I sort of rediscovered board games. I learned about Settlers of Catan, thought it
mm.
was amazing, and found this whole new world, really. I kind of skipped role-playing games in there, which to my shame, like I was from the UK, uh, uh, Games Workshop was massive, of
Uh,
course.
Yeah, you can't escape Games Workshop.
Right. And so
Anywhere in the world, you can't escape it, but
I
especially
spent
not
hours
in
and
the over
hours
there.
and lots of money at my local Games Workshop. Buying Warhammer Fantasy was my thing. So I had Skaven and Undead and all that good stuff. So I had a few friends that we would play that with regularly. But then, yeah, so I missed RPGs, kind of rediscovered what those were as an adult and rediscovered board games and then sort of, fully embraced that gamer tag, I suppose. Having known I was a gamer all along, but
Sure.
and then trying to make it something like I still have these sort of retreats that we do with my friends where we spend a weekend in a cabin and play games nonstop. We still do that kind of stuff, but running these mega games is a great way to sort of share the hobby, expand the hobby, um, you know, and if there is a pathway to doing this full time as a professional gig, like I've got my eyes on the prize. That's the
Yeah.
dream, of course, for most nerds. There are some pathways for me, which I'm sort of still exploring, and honestly, just trying to get myself out there and my message and doing things like this, talking to you and
Yeah.
any other people in the hobby that I can, because connections are so important when you just embrace this hobby fully.
Absolutely. It is as somebody who goes to over the last, 5 years or so have gone to a lot of conventions
Yeah,
and like the I mean, I'm sure it's the same sort of way as like I imagine like, acting or like
yeah,
working in like any sort of traveling show like you musician like the roadies are all whatever like whatever show you're like carrying kit for like there's a bar where you all go to and then you're
hmm,
on that side of the arena, but it's the
yeah.
same sort of thing in role-playing games where like you're packing all these people in the room and like they're all buying games and stuff like that, and then like the hall shuts down and all those people have to leave, and then you're
You go
like
talk shop.
you talk shop with all the other people
Yeah,
who are
you
there in
do.
the room, and
Yeah,
you know that like you are an exhibitor here too with me, and like there's a camaraderie, a family. It's the Khan
yeah,
family is like,
yeah.
and I've now, I mean, this is I'm late to the party, but there are people that I've met who have been like hosting people at their houses for game days and stuff like that, basically exclusively through like, hey, we met you at a con, come to our
Yeah.
house now and play games, um, and Yeah, it is
Well,
such a the
just one
networking side
more.
of it is just so much. It's so much there. It's such a thing.
And so like an interesting perspective I have is, I moved over to the States when when I first got married when I was 26. I met an American girl, so I moved over here. And the interesting thing about moving countries is you start with zero friends, right? And
Mm,
so as an adult, making friends is really tough. And so you
it
have
can
to
be
put
for
yourself
sure.
out there.
Hmm.
And so, you know, I would go on like, play dates, I suppose, and sort of, play a game with this person and go to the bar with this person and trying to find different ways of interacting with people and different connections that you have. And then eventually you kind of get good at it. It's a skill. And so
Mm,
talking to people and trying to find things in common is a skill and you have to practice it. And there's going to be some awkward moments, but that continues into selling yourself whenever you're in the industry. It's the same kind of set of skills. You try to find things in common with people and you form those connections that way.
yeah, I think when you have vendors talking to other vendors in the vendor hall at an
Hmm.
event, you get a it's you in some ways like you've literally put yourself out there because you've put all the stuff you've made on the table,
That's
and like
right.
you can walk
Yeah.
by and be like, "Ooh, what is the person who made this stuff is somebody that I want to know more about," and then
Yeah.
you can go and talk to them and you've kind of already put, both of you have displayed yourselves
You have to have
for the world.
confidence in
Uh,
yourself and your product. Yeah.
hmm And I love the moments when like you're looking at stuff and you're looking at stuff and then, it's not really for you or whatever. And then you find one thing in the corner that they're like they're so proud of it that
Hmm.
they can't not have it on their table, but they know it's
Yeah.
not the best seller, so they kind of have it off to the side. But then you spot it and you're like, "Oh, this one's great." And they're like, "Oh, thank you. That's my favorite one." But like I
Uh-huh.
can't, and you're like
Yeah.
you're really
You
through the
find their
meat.
passion.
Right.
Yeah.
Through the medium of products that you have for sale, you sort of discover the real people,
Yeah.
because I don't know, this is not even what we were here to talk about, but it's an
Well,
interesting
you
sideline
wait till I
with
start
the
talking about mega games.
so let me then ask, like, what I mean, okay, so there's one question is what is a mega game? But I
Yes.
think maybe before that, we need to like I want to connect the dots, right? So you've come to the States,
Hmm.
you're meeting people, you've got this whole history of, like you've played Catan, you grew up with Games Workshop, like
Hmm.
you are now into role-playing games. You're like, oh, look, it's HeroScape without a
Yeah.
board. Great.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like it seems like it's almost natural that like mega game you've named all the pieces of what I
Yeah.
understand a mega
Yeah.
game to be. So like it makes sense that that's where you come next. But what is that actual, uh, I mean, are you inventing it, or did you get
Yeah.
connected with a
Great
network
question.
that was already doing it,
Yeah.
before you tell us exactly what you do?
So, I guess another step before this is I discovered these things called murder mystery parties,
Mm,
which I
hmm.
have now come to learn is just a parlor LARP. It
Yeah.
is in my mind, there's two types of LARPs. There's like a boffer LARP, and then
Hmm.
there's a parlor or theater LARP, right? And a murder mystery party is just a parlor LARP. People don't sometimes like to equate those two things, but that's what it is. And so I really enjoyed those things too. And so I'd been to Gen Con, I'd done some LARPs and things, and always found them a little odd, a little strange, like you're trying to put on this character in front of these people that you don't know. Um, and sometimes they feel a little clicky, like there's an in club and there's an out club, and I never
Mm.
quite felt on the inside. And so
Seven
then,
friends all signed up together, and then their
yeah, and
characters
also
are now
like
automatically friends, and
that's right,
then
and they
yeah.
know they know the designer and the
Mm.
organizers, and so
Yeah.
they kind of get preferential treatment sometimes. So Um, pre-pandemic, so probably 2017 or something like that. There was a video that went viral. Excuse me. It was by Shut Up and Sit Down, which are a famous British board game reviewing site, and they were invited to a mega game in London, I think it was, called Watch the Skies. And excuse me, they were given a country. There was like four of them in the team, so they kind of went with their friends. They were given Japan to lead, and like one of them ended up as the chief scientist, one was the head of state, one was the chief of defense, and the other one was the UN ambassador. And so the four of them they're playing this game and they're filming the whole experience. And it's called Watch the Skies because there's a hidden team behind a curtain playing as aliens. And the
Hmm.
aliens are the drivers of the story because you're trying to deal with, socioeconomic, um, national stuff and international stuff, and meanwhile you've got aliens that appear over the skies, and you don't know what they want, whether they're friendly or maybe there to destroy all of humanity. And this video is fantastic. I recommend it to anybody watching this. They do such a great job. But there's a moment right in the middle of this video where they turned to each other and they were like, I think this is a role-playing game in disguise. Like
Mm.
it's like, oh, like a dude came over to my table and rolled a die. Like, I don't know. Why did he do that? I don't know. Like they were playing it like a board game, but it was a role-playing game with GMs floating around. They have what's called a control team, and they're basically there to help facilitate and to answer questions, but they're also there for player creativity. So, like, there's a good chance that one of the other teams wanted to plant a bug on Japan's table to listen into um, their head of state's conversations and learn some information they shouldn't have otherwise got, right? And so they did something with that control member to learn something different that wasn't written down in the rules as such. And so, then they start catching on like, oh, this is a role-playing game. Let's think about how we can turn this game into our own. And so it sort of became much more player-led. Anyway, it's a fantastic moment. I recommend it. That's kind of one of the main definitions of a mega game is, you know, player-led. What do you want to do as a player? Talk to the control team, and they can help make it happen. They can help bring that to light, make that story, and then your story becomes the story of the mega game. Like if there's
Hmm.
something really interesting that you want to do, you get a few people on board to help you with it, then the control team can go away and talk about that thing, and it can become a major element for the entire game. So that's one of the ways that role-playing game sort of expands to this really big picture, and that's why the mega in the mega game is you're playing with 40 to 100 people across 6 hours, all part of the same story.
Yeah.
I'm
So
going to pause there while
yeah,
you
yeah.
digest.
No, I absolutely. The So the question then is like, is that your like the to aggrandize the moment perhaps too much, but like that's your conversion experience, right? When you saw them do that, then you're like,
Yeah,
ooh, I have to do this. I have to be part of this
so
too.
interesting. Yeah. And so then I went to Gen Con, 2018. I played a version of Watch the Skies in 2018. I played the
Okay, so you
the
you went in for the
Deputy
very
Prime
same
Minister of
thing.
India. I just happened to be going to Gen Con anyway, and as I found that this was available. The next year, 2019, I played a game called Den of Wolves, which we could talk about later. It's basically Battlestar Galactica, the uh, the mega game, and then the pandemic hit.
Hmm.
So and then 2021-ish, I was like, I'd love to play some more mega games because those are amazing experiences. No one's really doing it. Like the pandemic killed a lot of groups that put them on around the country, and I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a copy of the package that the guys in England used and see if I can run it here locally in Louisville. And their package, a lot of this stuff is sort of lives in designer heads. So I had to do sort of design for the gaps, if you like. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how this thing works, so I'm going to sort of redesign that element. And then I don't know how this works, I'm going to redesign this. And then so I kind of convinced my game group, my board game group, to come along for the ride, and they were my control team. And we put on our first game in very beginning of 2022, right after the Omicron wave hit.
Yeah.
And then people were like ready to go back out into the real world after the pandemic. So, we did really well, and it was super successful. So
Yeah. So I, I've got a sense of it, and you talking about you went
yeah,
through some of the stats there about 30 to 50 people and takes all day, takes 6 hours. It's a big
yeah,
thing. You talked about control group and different teams and people
yeah,
behind screens, and so what's sort of the minimum that you think makes
yeah,
a mega game possible? Like like because obviously you could make again, a Gen Con event. Somebody I know was in like the largest game of Catan ever played because everybody's like playing around a huge long set of tables or whatever. Like big is makes sense, but like to really get the complexity to make it feel like a mega game? Like what's about the smallest number you would
Um,
want?
I think you could get away with 20-ish, you
Yeah.
know. I have
Okay.
played one smaller than that, but you kind of know everything that's going on. And
Yeah.
part of the beauty of a mega game is like not having a clue what's happening on the other side of the table. And the
Yeah.
stories that are developing, like in many of the mega games that we run, we have an after party. And for a lot of people, the after party is one of the favorite parts of the day because not only are they telling their side of the story, but they're also learning all the secrets that everybody
Yeah.
else, all the other things that people got into. So if you've got
It's
about 20 or so people, things feel bigger and you get a lot of great miscommunication because that drives great story when you don't get all the pieces, or if someone just comes to you and lies to you, like that becomes your reality and that story moves forward even though that story was built on a lie. Like
yeah.
those are great elements of mega games.
I So I want to ask about like the franchise model, which it seems like maybe there's sort of a thing there because if you can buy a kit that is Watch the
Yeah.
Skies, like that's an interesting thing that I want to talk about.
Yep.
But I so what is the so like I'm imagining here
Uh-huh.
that like a game, the game Captain Sonar. Are you
Yes.
familiar with that game? Like that is a very small LARP-ish game, very
Yep.
board game LARP-ish thing. But like I can imagine like what if you're playing two tables of Captain Sonar
Hmm.
on a table, and then you've got a crew of people who are actually positioning those
Yep.
submarines. Like each table, the interior of each submarine is represented by like 8 people at a table, but then those submarines are also being positioned on a map
You are
that is
totally designing a mega game right
that
now.
is on a third table. You have a third table that's on a map,
Yes.
but
Hmm.
then there's also aircraft and surface ships that are
Yep.
hunting the submarines, and that's all being controlled by like two other tables. So now you've got at least 5 tables of people that are doing
Yep.
different things, but they're all theoretically interacting with each other,
Yep.
and then you might have the space aliens in the next room who are watching it all with the telescope, right? I mean, it's
Yep.
so I guess so I'm on the right track with like the kind of stuff
Absolutely.
that
You've
this
you've
is.
just designed your first mega game. Congratulations.
So, like, what is that ideal percentage between like LARPy, real
Mhm.
personal role playing, sort of like, the captain, I'm the captain, give me the
Yep.
information now, scan that ship, damn it, like that kind of like
Yeah.
role
All right.
play side of
I'm gonna
it
tell you two
versus
things. I'm gonna
versus
tell you.
tabletop positioning versus like
Yeah.
like what's the percentage breakdown, like third and third, or
Well,
or
let me begin by telling you that
yeah.
what you've kind of described is the evolution of mega games in a lot of ways.
Mm.
They sort of evolved from war gamers
Yeah, I
playing with minis
imagine.
on a map,
Yeah.
right? And they were doing this game, maybe you have like six aside and you're all moving troops around a map. But then they wanted to sort of emulate what the real world might look like, that the commanders don't get ever to see those units that they have. So they would have like 6 or 8 people on a map, and then you have people stepped away from the map that are talking to each other, that are hearing from different unit movers, and then you've got one guy behind them, the general, that's supposed to be making all the decisions based on the terrible communication channels between the map and him. So that is kind of where they evolved from. And then as that evolved, it sort of became less mechanical. Like in a lot of ways, the mechanics don't matter as much. Like you can roll a simple die and get a result about a combat. But then it's the decisions around that, like you were talking about with the submarines and stuff. It's those kind of decisions around that, like why do we move this way and what's the enemy doing, and what are you hearing from the media and those kind of things that really make the mega game what it is. So, remind me your question because I just
Well, I
lost my
was just
track.
asking for like a rough sort of breakdown between like LARP
Yeah.
elements,
Okay, cool.
board game
Yeah.
elements, war game elements, role play game elements. Like, what are
So
you trying to hit a perfect balance, or is there like it depends on the game and some are
it
more.
absolutely depends. There's two sides of the spectrum, right? And games are in somewhere in there. There's the very sort of LARPy role playing side where um, there is very little mechanics, just enough to turn it from a LARP into a mega game. And then there's the other side, which are very heavily mechanical, which are quite hands off for the game runners. And all games fit in that spectrum somewhere. And some designers really like one side of the spectrum, and others really like the others, but mostly they fit in the middle. And so there's sort of like a in quotes standard mega game, and they call it the three table model or the four table model, and it basically means like you're all in teams, right? And on a team there's three or four people, and each of those people on the team goes off to a separate table to do a job, right? Like you described with Captain Sonar, where you've got a captain that's doing one thing, you've got an engineer that's doing the other thing. Those people are going off to do that engineering game, and maybe there's some kind of mini game mechanics there going on. And then you've got like the chief of defense that's going off and having conversations and moving troops around the map, and then you've got the UN ambassador that's going to the UN to talk about crises that are happening, and they're all making decisions individually, and then all come back to the table to talk about what they did, and the head of state is supposed to like work out all these bits of information to work out what to do next as a team, because all these sort of in quotes mini games all affect each other, right? And so that's the sort of standard model, and not all mega games use that, but that's become quite popular because it works so great. And you don't need a huge amount of mechanics. Like, there's a game called Den of Wolves that we play that I mentioned earlier, where the game runs basically on worker placement, and
Mm.
every team has their own ship, and you have a number of like workers, and you assign them to different elements of your ship, and they create goods, and they convert things and do other things, and they
It's a
turn the
worker
batteries
placement game.
on. Yeah. And so when the wolves start attacking, the Cylons slash wolves start attacking, you better have made sure that you assign someone to those batteries. Otherwise, you've got no one to shoot the wolves down when they appear in your skies. So, like, that's the worker placement. You're assigning these finite resources to do different things. And every table's making these same decisions, and you're communicating with these different tables to work out the best strategy going forward to defeat this incoming force. So, yes, there's some mechanics, but they're quite light in comparison. They're definitely heavier than LARPs. I'll tell you that much. Like most LARPs I've seen, you have like 5 cards in your hand, and that's it. But a lot of times in mega games, there's big maps, you're moving things around, there's worker placement elements, there's auction mechanics, there's dexterity games.
Yeah.
As long as they fit the theme, you know, uh,
A- And some of the pictures on your website, people are in costume as well while they're doing
yeah,
all this. So
yeah,
like, is that a consequence of just people being excited to be there and do it, or
yes.
is that sort of a feature of some of the games? Is like, no, 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 this one is going to be more immersive, and that's the feature of it, you know?
Yes, again.
Okay.
So so let me distinguish LARPs and mega games. There's one key distinction. For me, a LARP, you play a character. In a mega
Hmm.
game, mostly you play a role, and that's a really important distinction for me because sometimes you have a character, but you're supposed to play towards the role and not the character. Because
Like you've been saying, like Secretary of State or
yeah,
like Ambassador to the UN, these are
yeah,
roles not
you're not
necessarily like,
Joe Bloggs who has these mental issues and really likes flowers and whatever. You're playing a role, and that's great because it allows the players to not feel the pressure to put on silly accents or act in a certain way or whatever it is. But it allows them to embrace their role. Like if you're the head scientist, if anyone has a questions about scientist, you embody that role and be like, I know the answer to this one, and then you work it out as a scientist. So that's
well,
a really key distinction.
I think it encourages almost like those kind of any of those movies where, whatever's happening outside, like whether it's Godzilla or a space invasion
Yeah.
or a war, most of the movie takes place in a control center with like tents, people smoking and like,
Hmm.
looking at screens and stuff like that. It's like they aren't, Ed Harris accepted. There isn't like a lot of character in the people who are doing that work in those types of
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah, you don't need a
Um,
full character sheet for that
right.
with all your likes and
It,
dislikes.
it's
You're
more of
just the
a,
guy that understands those terminals and what they mean,
yeah, yeah.
and you can make decisions around those. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Uh,
Um,
oh,
there was about 5 questions you answered, and I just keep getting lost on certain tracks. But
no, no.
yeah,
I think you've talked through the kind of different elements that can be in play. That's kind of what I was curious about. Like, and I think the follow-up then to question to that is like, I think I know what the answer is going to be, but like, who are mega games for? If you're a gamer already,
yeah,
who
yeah.
who who's going to be attracted to a mega game? Who do you think are the people who you see most coming to games? Like, are they people who are like board gamers who are like, I've mastered one map, I need to be at a room with six maps in it? Or are they people who
Yeah.
are like, I like LARPing, but I don't want to go to the camp. I don't like the camping in the woods part of
Uh,
LARPing, so I need to be in like a room. Who comes to these events?
it's a really great question, and honestly, it's across the entire spectrum because there's an element of all of those hobbies baked into this, and sometimes, depending on the game, there is a more specific to what you would like. I can tell you who doesn't enjoy mega games, and it's folks with some sort of big social anxiety issues.
Hmm,
They can be chaotic. They're busy, fast moving. Even though it's 6 hours, which feels like a long time, when you're in the heat, like it, of things happening and the stress, it can be a bit overwhelming for some people. Now we bake in lots and lots of breaks so people can take a step back, and there are roles that are less stressful, but it is not uncommon for maybe one person a game to be like, hey, this isn't for me. I'm gonna leave. Especially at a convention. There's so much happening at a convention. I'm
sure,
like,
sure.
great. I'm really glad you brought that up to me. Go have fun at the convention, mini painting or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but for the majority, it's like the most amazing time. Like they're just shocked at how great it is. They love all elements of it. It gives them a chance to interact with people in a different way. They love embracing the roles. I know one of the questions you asked earlier. It was the dressing up, right?
Oh,
People get so into it, right? And they want to dress up because they want to embody those characters more. It's not mandatory by any stretch of the imagination. And if we can, with depending on the system that we're using, if it's an in-person game or if it's through a convention, um, if that convention lets us, we want to contact our players beforehand to let them know, to give them a chance to tell us what role is most suited for them, because I want them to have the best experience possible.
yeah, yeah.
So we always do some kind of pre-game survey if we can, and it says these are the roles available. This one's more heavy role play. This one's more mechanical. This one you might need to get up in front of everybody and use the microphone on occasion. Um, like a media role, for example, or the head of state that's giving information to everybody. And so then I play the game of match people to where they want to fit. Number one, I want to make sure you play with your friends because you'll have more fun. And number two, I want to make sure that the role you have fits your play style and your
Yeah, yeah.
personality. And then I send a list to everybody like, hey, this is who everyone is playing. Um, and that's where people are like, right, I'm playing the engineer. I'm gonna go find myself a jumpsuit. Like, and they come all ready to go. And or like I'm the captain and they come with like the terrible $20 Halloween costume sort of navy captain
Yeah, yeah.
thing. And it's
Epaulets
brilliant.
and
It just
yeah,
it just adds so much to the game when people are really into it like that.
yeah. And I think that is, I mean, I think that's uh that bringing that excitement into it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously games can generate excitement as well, but like if people are coming with excitement and with
yeah.
it's the joke about like wrestling. I don't know if you've ever heard this one, but it's that wrestlers are pretending to fight and the crowd is there pretending to cheer. Like you are playing
Oh
the
yeah.
role of the crowd. Like you
Yeah,
don't go to a wrestling event to not be an excited crowd. Like that's what you're
yeah,
supposed to do when you go. You are also playing a role.
yeah.
Um,
And that
uh,
has a ripple effect. Like it builds on itself because everybody's so excited to be there, and you can feel the buzz when you walk in the room. People are dressed up and ready to go. The experienced mega gamers all come with ideas of the way they want to take it to. Like I told you, it's
mm,
player led. So, there's one of my games that I created called Gods of the Ancient World, which is the ancient Greeks versus the ancient Romans. I had a player who, after they were assigned their role, turned up on the day before turn one even started and said, I want to do piracy. I know it's not in the rules. Can we make it happen? I'm like, that is a great idea. I'm so glad you suggested it. We're going to make it happen. And they just had the best time.
yeah.
Like we made sure that all their moves were secret. They didn't know where these pirates are coming from. They thought they were control led. They weren't. They were player led because we were doing the movement for them, and we brought them into it. And the best thing is, I always tell people when they begin is try to make this game fun for at least two other people, because
Mm,
that way it's that same
that's
ripple effect. You're
that's
encouraging everyone to come along for the ride, and the folks that are a little bit more introverted and maybe a little bit unsure of themselves, or maybe have not got the experience with this sort of player-driven um, way of playing, that they're in it. Like there's a new guy on that team, and they're like, "We're gonna play pirates, but that's not in the rules." I know, but the control team said we can. Like, oh, that's when things get really exciting. Yeah,
Yeah. I love that as a piece of advice where, uh, we'll do our best to make it fun for you, but
yeah,
you need to make it fun for two other people. Like that's
yeah,
such an incredible like invitation to
yeah,
for a fun
yeah.
experience. All right, so you've talked some about the games, and we've talked
Yes.
some about like, and I think following on from that question, like it seems like this ancient world game that you just described,
Mhm.
it wasn't Whom Gods Destroy. That's like a Star Trek episode. What you just called it? What was the name of
It's
the
Gods of the Ancient World.
Gods of the
Yeah,
Ancient World? Very
yeah,
simple. But like if somebody has played that already and they've
yeah,
seen how it's quote unquote supposed to be played, that's sort of like then they come back the next year or at another event and they're like, okay, now I want to see how it works if I put pirates in it. So
yeah.
like, and I'm making up a story. I don't know if that's what happened, but like,
That's absolutely what happens. Yeah,
I think that the idea that these games are not products, but you mentioned like getting this what the at the
yeah,
beginning you mentioned like getting the Watch the Skies kit from the designers. Like so there is sort of like a these aren't all original productions by Dukes of Highland, like
yeah,
this is
yeah,
you are trading around and then like iterating on what other people have done and like what is that side of it like? Like what are the
yeah.
actual like is it you when you get a product or get a new game, is it comes in a couple three-ring binders and like it's a lot of advice and
I wish. I wish. So so if you want to run a game, there's two ways you can do it. You can either design your own game,
hmm
which is a huge amount of work. I've done it
yeah.
like twice now, well, two and a half times. And then there's one where you can buy an in quotes package from someone. And most of the time, 99% of the time, that is someone is sharing their Google Drive with you um, of of
Okay.
of all the documents that you need
Yeah.
to run it. The Mega Game World is in a lot of ways still in its infancy. It's been around since maybe the 80s with that evolution that I talked about earlier. But in terms of the package that you buy, because I said so much is in the designer's head, there's a lot of stuff that is fuzzy. And so one of the things I'm passionate about is making sure that package you buy is really complete so that you don't have to bug the designer to find out how to play it. Like it's very clear how many things you need to print off and how to build the components and the tokens that you need and that kind of stuff. So we are as an industry not great at that right now. So I run a mixture. I run games that I've developed and I run games that I've heard about on a podcast or whatever and thought, "Ooh, that's a fantastic theme. I would love to run that." I ran a game last year called "It Belongs in a Museum," which is the famous quote from Indiana Jones
Yeah,
where
yeah.
he's shouting at the Nazis because they've just taken his artifact away from me. It was an unbelievable theme. You're all explorers running off round the globe, finding these artifacts, and then you're giving them to museums, and the museums get buffs from them, and that kind of stuff. It was amazing, um, but it was really tricky to put together because so much of it was it only ever been run by the designer, and so I had to work with the designer, and I helped build their package out a little bit. So there is one game called Touched by Darkness, which is a complete package where you press a button and it arrives at your house.
Wow.
It's via the Game Crafter. If you're familiar with that
Yeah.
website, it's mostly for prototypes and stuff. But what he's done is he's built this game. He's got all the components. It's all packaged really nicely. And then when you hit buy, it costs maybe 100 or 200 bucks or something. And then that package comes to your house. It's ready to run out the box. And then with that, you get the license to run it basically as much as you want to. So, in some ways, yes, you have to invest 200 bucks to buy the package, but then you can sell tickets to your games of whatever
hmm
you want, whether it's 10 bucks or if it's 50, whatever you think you can sell, and you should be able to make your money back. Most of the time you don't because it's hard to find that right balance.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is because mega games are an easy sell if you know what a mega game is. It's not an easy sell if you don't know what a mega game is, and most people don't. So it's
Yeah.
hard for me to say, Matthew, you should come and spend $50 on a ticket to an event that you have no idea what it's going to be.
Right. Right.
I could maybe convince you for $10, like, oh, $10 is okay. I could do,
Sure.
I'll go and see what that's like. But that's the tricky part. Once I've got you, then it's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna spend
Right.
$50 to go play this game.
I mean, yeah, I mean, so many games. I don't know, like that's a whole other line that makes me think about like the value proposition of
Yeah,
whatever it is. Like people are like, oh, $70 for a board game. It's like, but six people are going to play it, and you're going to play it like
for
probably
hours
10
and hours.
times. And
Yeah,
like, the even if you only play it three times, you've like made your money back after like one and a
yeah,
half times of playing it, like
yeah.
quote unquote made your money back if you compare it to like a movie ticket or something like that,
Oh,
which,
sure. Yeah.
whatever you want to compare it to, right? And so, all day, $50, that's not the worst, that's not the worst like idea of like a
Mhm.
value proposition at least
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying about like it is harder to put down $50 than it is to put down 10
Yeah.
on most
But
things.
you do want to charge because you've invested so much. Like, especially I have to rent my own hall
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
I've bought all the components. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours getting stuff, designing and getting stuff ready. Like, it's a massive investment. It's real. It's a real passion project,
And if
really.
you've got
Um,
like, you might be employing people or at least paying them for their time for like managing the site and
Pizza and
like,
beer. Yeah. You know.
right. I mean, you get a volunteer. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure these kind of things don't run without volunteers. I mean,
Mm.
you have to get that, but then, there are some, like you said, logistics or whatever with the site and
Yep.
whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, well, I want to hear. I'm sure there's little nooks and crannies that we could get into and explore some
Oh
more
yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
I do want to hear about like some of the offerings that you, as Dukes of Highland, have coming up this season calendar.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, what do you call it? Like what do you? We're recording in mid-March, so
Yep.
what's the next thing coming up that people could, if they've listened to this deep into the conversation and haven't
Well,
gone to the website already, what is the
so I've got a bunch of things, and I probably do
yeah.
more than most people. There are. I want to say that if you're watching this and you're not from Louisville, there are events sort of spotted all around the country. There's an active group in Philadelphia. There's an active group in Portland. There's two active groups in Texas. Um, the big conventions are where it's easier to find mega games. A lot of these groups all come together. In fact, they formed out of these conventions and then went back to their cities and ran them there. So you will find them at Gen Con. PAX Unplugged was last year too. Origins has been spotty. Um, but for us specifically, depending on when this goes out, the next one we have on the books is April 26th, which is Event Horizon. It is not one of my designs. It's one that I bought, like we talked about. It's based basically on the movie from the 90s with Sam Neill, whereby you're all a
Oh,
fleet of
right.
ships,
I had to,
and
yeah.
yeah, and there's a ship called the Event Horizon that disappeared and suddenly came back, and
Hmm.
then you sort of go on board it, and spooky things have happened. And people went insane and that kind of stuff is fabulous.
Yeah.
So it's a little darker maybe than what we normally do, but it's really, really strong theme.
So that sounds like maybe there's more map-based movement, keeping track of
Yeah,
things than
only on board
average.
the Event Horizon itself. So
Okay.
this game's split into two rooms. One room is on board the Event Horizon, and the Event Horizon is built from tiles that are all face down. So it's an exploration game, and you're
Yeah.
uncovering things as you're moving around the map. But then there's no communication between the two rooms. So you have to go physically back into the fleet room, talk to the fleet, make plans, how you're going to approach, where power needs to go, which systems need to be turned on. But then you have to ensure, entrust people to go onto the event horizon, not die, and solve all those problems.
And
So that's
it
that's
is
the two room dichotomy.
then I guess don't spoil it if you think it might, but like is there like then the reliability of that messaging system being people walking between rooms like that like you get a card at some point that's like sorry, you're working for the monsters now and like
Everyone has a personal objective in this game, and they don't always align with each other.
hmm,
Yeah, That's
Okay.
quite common in mega games too. You
I'm
want
sure.
player conflict. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But by limiting that flow of information, you put the suspects, and then you get the
absolutely.
social deduction element or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. All right,
All right.
I'll move on.
If yeah, yeah. Well, is there if this is going out like what's is there like a final like how late can people sign up for this if this is on the 26th?
Technically,
What?
so this game runs 48 players. Technically, you can sign up till the day before as long as there's tickets available. My preference is you sign up at least a week before because then it gives me a chance to do that turnaround on the survey and me mapping people to the perfect positions for them. Um, Things are always a little trickier because I have to get that out to the people that have bought their tickets early.
Right.
And if you sign up with 2 days to go, I'm like, I might be able to squeeze you on a team with your best friend that was bought his tickets, 6 weeks ago, but I can't promise anything. So
Right. Right.
always go at least a week out if you can with mega games.
Excellent.
Um, all
What
right, so
else?
then next we're going to go to MomoCon. This is our
Right.
first time going to MomoCon. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. It's on the May 23rd and 24th. We're going to be running Den of Wolves and Deep Haven. Den of Wolves is the Battlestar Galactica one we talked about earlier. It is probably the second most mega game, the second most played mega game. It's fantastic. Technically, you're all working together, but there are traitors in this game.
Yeah.
So people are always acting suspicious, bombs going off, ships being destroyed. It's amazing. Um, and Deep Haven is much more role play heavy. Um, you are all playing as dwarves, um, building a new mountain home. There is a map, there's a massive whiteboard, and there is the Cartographers Guild are mapping out the
Oh
home as
man.
you're playing. So you're
Nice.
building the map as you play based on cards that are drawn, um, and the way that people like, okay, this guy's we just discovered this empty cavern. Great, I want to put in a university for dwarves to teach them how to brew more beer. The Brewers Guild is now happy. The Engineers Guild is now happy. The Health and Safety Guild are not quite happy because you built it in a cavern you shouldn't have done. It's very player driven, and as a control team, we have no idea what to expect because it's super player driven.
Yeah.
You have to come prepared with crazy ideas and schemes for Deep Haven.
All right.
Um,
That sounds like I mean most of these are like you can imagine the board game or the role-playing game that is like the first level of any of these. So
yeah.
there's a mapping solo game called Delve, which is exactly what you just described, except it's a solo game. It comes in like
Okay.
a little 48-page pamphlet and you draw your deck of cards and like,
Uh-huh.
oh, that cave has this in it as you draw your map of digging
Uh-huh.
down into the
Yep.
mine, and it's all the same elements, but it's
Yep.
designed for solo play.
Deep
Um,
Haven's designed for 70 players, which is pretty
That's so
crazy.
many players.
Yeah.
That's so many players.
I'll tell you one more thing about Deep Haven before
Yeah,
we move
please.
on. There's a huge Jenga tower in the middle of the room, which
Okay.
represents the mine. And every time you want to delve for more goodies, you have to pull from the Jenga tower. And of course, if you delve too deep and too greedily, there's this
Uh-huh.
enormous
Uh-huh.
crash that happens. And as the control team, we use that as a trigger to introduce, Balrogs and dragons and all kinds of
Right,
problems
right.
because you shouldn't
I
have done that.
almost asked if there's a delve too deeply element to this.
Yeah.
So
And it's so visceral too. When it's this thing is it's a big Jenga tower, like it's the blocks are kind of this big, right? And
yeah,
so
yeah.
when this thing falls, the whole room knows about it, and it's such a great moment. Um, and what makes it even better is that this tower's inconveniently placed in the middle of the playing area.
It's
So it
probably
might
makes a
happen
mess.
that someone's just walking around with a backpack who turns the wrong way and the whole thing falls. And of course the guys in charge of the mining are all like, what are you doing? Like we had this structurally safe and you idiot, you walked in and you knocked the thing over when you weren't even digging. You're like, I know, I'm sorry.
So is there like a structural, it's like a not health and safety, but like there's some people who are able to like shore up the tower as people
No, you're
remove
not
blocks?
supposed to. You're not
Okay.
supposed to.
Because
Yeah.
that could be
But
a
there
whole
is health and
other
safety. Yeah. We don't want them to. As game runners, we want the thing to fall. It's more
well,
interesting when it falls.
sure, sure, sure. But like, I think some people would really get into being like, I'm putting in more supports. We need more supports over here. They're just spending their
Yeah.
whole time like
Well,
massaging the tower.
there is a health and safety team and they go round, but they're just managing the the creation, the assets that other people are creating. Like, oh, you're building a university. I need to make sure it checks off all these boxes. And so that's a way for those two teams
Your
to
brewery
integrate
needs
and talk.
ventilation.
That's right, yeah. There's a lava flow happening, and it looks like it's about to hit the school for orphans. We need to
We
fix
should
that
do something
problem.
about that. We should do something about that.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Uh,
that's Deep Haven.
yeah.
That's MomoCon.
All right.
Tickets for that are on sale too. Through the MomoCon website, you have to buy your badge first, and I think tickets
Right.
they're fairly cheap for that one because we've never had Mega Games at MomoCon before, but I think they're about $20 a piece. So and there's a whole convention to explore as well. So
Right. MomoCon is a big one.
yes, yeah, it's very big. It's almost as big as Gen Con, I believe now.
Yeah, it's quite large.
Speaking of Gen Con, that is in 7/31 through August the 3rd. Um, Nothing's set in stone there because space is getting more and more limited every year at Gen Con, which is a shame. They've always been really supportive of Mega Games, but we'll see what we can get is what it boils down to.
Sure.
Um, the Dukes of Highland specifically, I would love to put on Event Horizon. It'd be a different audience, a different kind of game when you've got convention goers. And my new game, which is Spaceship 13, which is my own design. We ran a play test of it last month. Essentially, you are all clones aboard. If you've ever played Paranoia, the role-playing
Hmm.
game, it's got elements of that. You're all clones aboard a spaceship moving around. There are different jobs. There's like an engineer, and there's a captain, and there's a medical doctor, and there's a clown, and they're all running around doing objectives. It's very silly, but like we had the clown in the game that we played who was like gumming up the elevator shafts with banana peels, and there was a
That
black hole opened up in the executive wing and started sucking people into it. It was fantastic. It was really great. So that's Spaceship 13. So that's Gen Con. It's a
Yeah.
TBD. We'll see if that happens. Next on my calendar, I've got Gods of the Ancient World. I think that one might get cancelled because in November, over the Halloween weekend, which is October 31st through November 2nd, the Dukes of Highland and Nerd Louisville, which is the big community-based group here in town, we are going to run our own convention.
Nice.
It'll be called LouisCon. It's the first year that we've done it. They tried a few years ago. They had Nerd Luvia, but
Hmm.
they had some issues with space and advertising that kind of stuff. So
It's been tough to get it going. Like
it has, yeah,
I think it's basically been in a different venue every year that it's existed,
yeah,
almost going back, 8 or 9 years. It's been in a different place every year because
yeah.
it's very hard to organize space, and
Well,
I'm sure
event
it's hard to
management.
afford space.
Oh, it
Like
certainly is.
it's tough. It's a tough road to hoe.
But here's the thing, like event management is what we
Uh,
do, right?
uh-huh.
And so they
There you
approached us and
go.
said, would you want to run a convention with us? And we were like, we've been kind of toying with the idea of what a mega game convention might look like. Um, and so we said, yeah, let's do this. So over that weekend, they and us are going to join forces. We're going to join mailing lists and money and volunteers and experience, and we want to make it like a really great Louisville con. We think we can get, 500 people and really make it a really nice con for Louisville. I know back in the day we had
Conglomeration.
Conglomeration, yeah, and we've got River City Con, which is in January, but those are run by the folks that I think they're all based in Lexington or something, and so this will be a Louisville con for Louisvillians,
Yeah.
run by Louisvillians, and there's going to be board games, role-playing games, minis, maybe Magic the Gathering, puzzles, and also a
You
full
you
suite of
can
mega
never not
games.
have Magic the Gathering. It'll show up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And whilst Magic isn't my thing, there are tons of passionate people that would love to see it, and we're going to empower those guys to run tournaments and whatever else they want to do.
Right.
And so yeah, mega games. There's going to be. I would love to run 3 mega games across that
Like
weekend.
one a day,
Um,
basically.
Probably, yeah. And they'll all be complimentary. Like you buy your ticket into the convention, because it's kind of an experimental, we're doing this for the first time. When you buy your ticket into the convention, then you can playing as many of these games as you want to. And we'll probably do like maybe Den of Wolves, maybe Spaceship 13. I don't know. We've not decided yet, but some ones that we're really confident that will go well. Um,
Right.
and we may not know who all players are before they turn up because we'll sort of be advertising on site too. So there'll be games that are easier for us to assign
Yeah.
players
Yeah.
on the spot. Yeah.
And as part of as a person who sells role-playing games and board games, is
Yeah.
there a
Yeah.
vendor
There will
element
be
to
vendors,
this? Yeah.
certainly.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. We're already excited about the kind of vendors that are in this area. I
Hmm.
know that we've got a big list of folks that we want to invite to the table, and
Yeah.
yeah, we just want it to be successful, really.
Sure. I'm excited for that because, as a Louisville game person, it just feels
Yeah.
like Louisville should have more local. Somehow it feels like Louisville's big enough to have a
Yeah.
game con of its own. But you know, Lexington's over there. I'm not a sports ball rivalry, but it is sort of like the classic is like, why does Lexington have like multiple
Yeah.
great gaming events and Louisville has like some piddly ones or whatever.
Well,
Um,
RCC is brand new. Like this is the second year that they did it this year, and it's
yeah.
been pretty successful. They've been over in the Holiday Inn. We're going to be in the Marriott East, and it's the space is gorgeous.
All
It's a
right.
really nice location. It'll feel like being at
Is
a
it
Gen Con kind of hotel.
is that the
Yeah,
one on
just
uh
off Hurstbourne,
yeah, Hurstbourne. I
south of
was
64. Yeah,
hmm. Yeah. Well, I look forward to it. I'll probably be if it happens, I'll probably be there.
yeah,
And
brilliant. Yeah.
maybe even playing a mega game.
Oh, I'd love to have you join. And I tell you what, I feel like I might have already converted you, but you need to play one, and then you'll be a convert. Yeah,
Sure, sure. It's definitely an experience I haven't had, something to check
yeah.
out sometime.
And
Uh,
it's like being a role it's like a role playing game. Like it's hard to appreciate a role playing game unless you're in it. You know, you
hmm.
don't quite understand how it's working. Everyone else seems to be in like this collective story. I know that Critical Role has done a really good job of sort of making it a spectator sport and those kind of things, but I feel like there is no experience like being in a role playing game. And it's the same
Yeah,
with mega games. You have to step into those shoes and just sort of embrace the chaos and this and use it as a storytelling experience
yeah.
because you'll be talking about mega games like all the way home and like for the next weeks and you'll be like, okay, when's the next one coming? Oh, that's an interesting theme. I could tell some really interesting stories in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been neat. It's been fascinating to get to find out about it and get to know you. So in this interview, tell people where we've mentioned Dukes of Highland several times, but like
Yes.
where are the linkables? What's the quotables? Where can tickets be found? All of the stuff. Where is it? Where
So
are
I
you
have
on
a
the internet?
website that is always up to date. It's dukesofhighland.net. That's always up to date with our latest offerings. I have a newsletter which you can sign up for on the site too. I send a piece of mail out once a month. I know how terrible spam can be, so we don't do that. I don't sell your information. It's just to let you know about the cool games that are happening. And then um, we have a Discord. There's actually two Discords that are really interesting. There's ours, the Dukes of Highland. There's links to it on the website. There's also another one called the Mega Game Coalition. They have a great resource for folks to get sort of plugged into North America specifically. And one more place that you might want to look if you're outside of the country or you just want to know what the calendar of games looks like across the world, the Mega Game Assembly, megagameassembly.com has a global calendar. So if you can filter by region too. So if you're North American, you hit North America and it shows you like the games in Portland and Texas and PAX U and all those different places. They're all available on Mega Game Assembly.
Neat.
Yeah.
Or for Australian viewers and UK
Absolutely. Yeah.
viewers or whatever,
Australia has quite a thriving community. The UK has a huge community. There's some in South America just starting to pop up. Like mainland Europe have got a really great. We've got a few places like in Sweden. The Event Horizon was designed by Swedish players, and they do a lot of the Nordic LARPs too. So
Hmm.
you'll
Hmm.
see some of those like themes come through. They're a
Yeah.
bit more
Yeah.
LARP heavy because of that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, there's so much like opportunity for all these different segments of gaming
Yeah.
to learn some from each other a little bit,
Yeah.
with all
And
these things.
regionally too, right? A game
Sure.
that's produced in the UK is going to feel different from the kind of games that we get here in the US. It's like when the board game hobby really started back again in the 2000s, you have the German style Euros
Hmm.
meet the Ameritrash games.
That was
And
the big debate
that's
between
right.
the thing, and like you don't hear.
And we've seen them come together.
Yeah, you
Like
don't
look
hear
at
that
something
distinction
like
anymore.
look about Wormspan, or it's a Euro game at its heart, but it's full of
So
fancy dragons. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
it is both of those
So
things. It is both of those things. Yeah.
mega games are no different. You find influences from like Nordic LARPs and the things that they do in Australia, and then the things that we're doing over here too. Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, I think so. This maybe this is too late in the interview to ask this question, but like, is there? You talked about playtesting a game. So I have one final question for you.
yeah,
You talked about playtesting Spaceship 13.
yes.
Is there? That's so the newest thing. So like, what are some of the other ideas that you might have that are like, ooh, someday I'll get to this. What's a mega
Oh,
game you
things
want
that
to
are
design?
boiling. Oh,
What?
there's so
eh,
many.
I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. But like,
Like any designer, there's
sure.
always a few things in the pot that are boiling. Um, I would
What's
love to
something that might
do.
float to the surface
Um,
from
I'm
the
really
boiling pot?
keen on doing like something in the same universe as Spaceship 13, which is more role play heavy.
Okay.
I love Paranoia. I think it's so
Yeah.
interesting. I would love to see a mega game version of Paranoia. But my big design challenge is how do we make it um, control light? How do we make it GM
Mm.
light? Because, a good GM dictates the whole game, right? And, I'm going to move you between these rooms, and now it's time to, bring in these NPCs or whatever.
Well,
What does it look like
the
if I
game
have
master in
teams of
Paranoia, somebody's playing the friend computer, right? And you've got to kind
Right.
of,
Well, that's the
but
easy
like,
part. I can have one player playing friend computer that's like visiting
well,
all the different tables,
that's what I'm saying is like you just have to
Yeah.
separate out the that person is the game master in Paranoia too.
Yeah.
So to like separate that role out. Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah, that's the
I
easy part.
interrupted you.
I can have like teams of troubleshooters all doing like different, fixing things or whatever the stupid troubleshooters do, the red levels. Like I could have maybe 10 tables worth of troubleshooters doing different missions. And then I've got like two or three people playing friend computer that are bouncing between them, like causing mischief. And then I could have like a team of green level folks that are like assigning missions for these different
Yeah.
troubleshooters. Like this is totally doable. I just have to solve like what does a GM-less version of Paranoia look like? Like that's my big
Yeah.
design challenge with that one. But I'd love to see that one
Yeah.
come into
It's
fruition next year.
well, that's interesting. It's interesting for sure.
Yeah. Also in the pot, we talked a little bit earlier about what a something um what a pathway to taking this full time might look like. And I
mm,
think it's educational mega games.
mm,
There's no better way than engaging a classroom than having them doing something interactive. And I did at my MBA a few years ago, and we played basically an electronic version of a mega game. Each team was a group of five of us that had different roles, just like a mega game, and then we would log into a portal and we would manage a business. And it was sort of it had a we were all selling laptops was the business, and so we were competing directly for business against the other teams playing, which was kind of like a mega game except it was online. I would love to see something like, you're in a classroom of high schoolers and you're doing STEM and you're all managing manufacturing businesses. And you there is an upstream and a downstream for resources and things that are needed. And what happens if someone upstream from you is like uh, doing shoddy materials? How does that affect things downstream and all the sort of ramifications that might have? So some really interesting design decisions in there, like how does one teacher, one GM control an entire classroom of people? How do you make sure that the kids are meeting their learning objectives? How
right,
do you make
right.
sure that the game has a save state so that you can do 30
Because
minutes of one
yeah,
lesson and then the same again next week? you
Right,
know?
right. It's the short amount of time available within
Yeah.
the classroom period is such a challenge.
How do you get the kids psyched to talk about the deals they're making outside of the classroom? Like if that's the trying to sign of success is if they leave that room and are still like, oh boy, we just discovered this and we really want to sell this and monetize this. What's that going to look like? Like that's where you've really engaged the kids. And I think
Yeah.
I was talking to some folks in the education space, and they were talking about how they're buying copies of Minecraft. So they have to buy 30 licenses of Minecraft. The kids are all logging in, they're all building stuff. It's, STEM type activities. And so they're spending, I don't know, $300 or whatever that looks like. I could give them a box of mega game components with us with the all the learning objectives baked into it, and they run, a five lesson plan out of the box for 150, $200. Like
Yeah.
I know that that is in sort of educational budgets, and they could definitely do that, but
Yeah.
there's lots of barriers before we get to that space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is yeah, not too long ago I was at Gamma Expo and then
Yeah,
education stuff was something we talked about and I had the Adam Watson of Ohio Valley Educational
yeah,
Cooperative on earlier. We were talking about game stuff in the education space. So there's definitely like I don't want to call it a growth area, but it is sort of like there is
oh,
more
it's definitely an
integration.
opportunity.
Uh,
Yeah,
right, but that sounds so cynical. It is sort of like more, even if it is like you could sell this product to schools, like that is
yeah,
not what I'm saying. There is opportunity to collaborate and
yeah.
work in that space. But
And Adam's doing role-playing games in the classroom, which is fantastic.
yeah,
But again, very GM heavy. One GM could maybe look after five kids,
yeah,
and that's pushing it, right? When you want all their attention all the time. And I commend him for doing that. But a mega game is a little different because if I can keep those group of five kids doing their own thing and them having to talk to other group of five kids, then I can run an entire room with one person. Like
right.
there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I think there is. I think there is.
Yeah,
Well, we'll continue these conversations, I'm sure. All of
I
us
hope so.
running into each other at cons and in
Yeah,
the local scene and stuff like that. So, Tony, thank you so much today for your
no,
time talking about all
absolutely.
this
Yeah,
stuff. It's been a pleasure to learn about the what a mega game is. I mean,
yeah.
like I said, I had a vague sense of it, but I'm pretty clear now on what it is. Excuse me, on what it is. So,
Yeah. Well,
thanks
thanks for
for
having me. Yeah,
yeah, it's been fun. It's been
yeah.
fun. And what I always like to invite people to make something sort of something in the comments. So like I don't know, what's your what what uh what two games would you put together into a mega game, right? Like I was what
Inspirations for mega games.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like start with, I want it's Catan, but you're also gonna then play King of Tokyo, and that's a mega game, and or
yeah.
stuff like that.
And sometimes it starts with the theme, like, oh, I would love to do, a theme about based on this video game or whatever. Like
Mhm.
a friend of mine loves Frostpunk. Like there's a mega game in there somewhere. And sometimes it starts with the mechanics. Like I was playing Flip Ships a few months ago at a friend's house thinking, this is a fantastic game. How can I get this in one of my mega games, So it comes from both sides, but mostly it starts with the theme. What
Yeah,
sounds great from a theme perspective?
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, you hopefully you could check the comments and you'll find some
Yeah,
inspiration here. If you need any more inspiration after you've got all you've got too many ideas already, it
I've got
sounds
lots of
like.
ideas. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Yep.
We'll see you around. Thanks everybody for watching.